I came home for our 5th anniversary expecting champagne and roses. Instead, I found divorce papers on the kitchen counter and my husband's elderly aunt sitting in the living room with a knowing smile. "He's moved in with that real estate agent," she said calmly. "Left these for you to sign. Took everything of value, too." Aunt Felicia leaned forward with sharp eyes that had seen decades of family drama. "Shall we begin, dear?" she asked, tapping a thick folder beside her chair. I nodded, having no idea what I was agreeing to. 3 weeks later, Dean was on his knees begging me not to destroy him. But let me start from the beginning. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The drive home from my business trip to Chicago should have been filled with anticipation. 5 years of marriage deserved celebration, and Dean had been unusually attentive in his texts all week. Can't wait to celebrate with my beautiful wife and have something special planned for Friday night. I'd even cut my consulting meetings short by half a day to get home early, stopping at that expensive boutique in downtown Milwaukee to buy the black silk dress he'd admired in the window months ago. Our suburban neighborhood in Brookfield looked picture-perfect as always, the October leaves creating a golden carpet across our manicured street. But something felt wrong the moment I pulled into our driveway. Dean's BMW wasn't there, which was odd for a Friday afternoon. The house looked dark, no warm glow from the windows I'd expected to see. I balanced my laptop bag, overnight case, and the boutique shopping bag as I fumbled with my keys. The front door was unlocked, which immediately set me on edge. Dean was obsessive about security, always lecturing me about locking up even when we were home. "Dean?" I called out, stepping into the entryway. "Honey, I'm home early." Silence. The house felt different, emptier somehow. As I set down my bags, I noticed things were missing. The antique mirror in the hallway that had belonged to my grandmother, the expensive sound system from the living room, even the small Tiffany lamp from the side table. My heart started racing. Had we been robbed? "Dean?" I called louder, rushing through the rooms. The living room, dining room, his home office, all showed signs of things being removed. Not violently, but carefully, selectively. That's when I saw her. "Oh, but it is." Dean made sure of it. She leaned forward, her eyes intense. "He's been planning this for over a year, Emily. Systematically moving assets, building his case for why you deserve nothing. Those business trips he encouraged you to take, they weren't just to advance your career, they were to establish a pattern of absence, neglect of the marriage." I felt sick. He set me up. Completely. Right down to timing this divorce filing for maximum financial advantage. "Your consulting business has been struggling lately, hasn't it? Hard to afford a good divorce attorney when you're barely keeping your head above water." She was right. The last 6 months had been brutal professionally. Several major clients had dropped my marketing firm, citing budget cuts. I'd been scraping by, using credit cards to cover basic expenses. Dean knew all of this, had been supportive and understanding about our temporary financial strain. "So what happens now?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "I sign these papers and walk away with nothing." Felicia closed the folder and stood up with surprising grace for her age. She was smaller than I'd first thought, but there was something formidable about her presence. "That depends, dear," she said, moving to stand directly in front of me. "How badly do you want to fight back?" I looked around the house I'd called home for 5 years, now stripped of its warmth and many of its contents. I thought about Dean's calculated betrayal, the months of lies, the financial trap he'd set for me. "What did you have in mind?" I asked. Aunt Felicia's smile was sharp, and completely without mercy. "Shall we begin?" I stared at Felicia's sharp smile, my mind reeling from everything she'd just revealed. The divorce papers felt heavy in my hands, like they weighed more than just paper. They carried the weight of my entire future crashing down. "I don't understand," I said, setting the documents on the coffee table with shaking hands. "Why would you help me? Dean is your nephew, your family." Felicia's expression darkened. "Dean Watson stopped being family to me the day he convinced his Uncle Henry to change his will." She settled back into the chair, her posture rigid with old anger. My late husband built a successful accounting firm over 40 years. When Henry got sick 3 years ago, Dean swooped in like a vulture, convinced that sweet old man that I was getting too senile to handle finances, that the business should go to someone younger and more capable. Dean inherited Henry's business, every last client, every asset, every relationship Henry had built. Her voice was bitter. I went from being a business partner to being a charity case overnight. Dean graciously allowed me to keep the house and a small monthly allowance, as if I hadn't worked beside my husband for decades building that company. I felt a chill of recognition. He did the same thing to me, didn't he? Made me financially dependent. Oh my dear, you have no idea how calculated this has been. Felicia reached into her folder again, pulling out bank statements. Do you remember when you had that issue with your business account last year, the one where payments kept getting delayed or lost? I nodded. It had nearly destroyed my consulting firm. Several major clients had accused me of billing irregularities, payments that showed as processed on my end, but never reached their accounts. The stress had been overwhelming. Dean orchestrated that, Felicia said flatly. He has connections at the bank through his real estate dealings, a few strategic glitches in the system, some carefully timed delays, and suddenly your professional reputation is in tatters. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow, but he was so supportive during all of that. He helped me through the financial crisis, covered our bills when clients stopped paying, making you grateful and dependent. Classic manipulation. She showed me printed emails. These are from Dean's personal account to Lauren. He brags about managing Emily's career decline, and jokes about how trusting you are. My hands trembled as I read Dean's words describing me as financially clueless and easy to control. He'd written to Lauren about how simple it was to isolate me from friends and family, by keeping me busy with work troubles and travel. I tried calling him 17 times on the drive home. I whispered, pulling out my phone to show the call log. Straight to voicemail every single time. He's at Lauren's new condo right now, celebrating, Felicia said matter-of-factly. She posted about their new beginning on Instagram an hour ago. I opened the app with dread. There it was, Lauren Watson, the blonde real estate agent, holding up a champagne glass in what looked like an expensive penthouse apartment. The caption read, "Freedom tastes like Dom Perignon. New life, new love, new adventures with my amazing man." Dean was tagged in the photo, his arm visible in the frame. "That's our champagne," I said, recognizing the distinctive label. "We were saving that bottle for tonight, our anniversary." "He took quite a bit when he moved out yesterday," Felicia confirmed. "The good wine, your grandmother's china, even that painting you loved from the bedroom." Lauren apparently has expensive tastes. I scrolled through more posts. Photos of Lauren wearing jewelry I'd never seen before. Jewelry that looked suspiciously like pieces from my collection that I hadn't worn lately. Dean at an expensive restaurant I'd suggested for months, but he'd always said was too pricey. "How long have you known about this?" I asked, showing Felicia the social media evidence. "I've been watching Dean carefully since he stole Henry's business, learning his patterns, his methods." She tapped another folder beside her chair. "When I heard he'd gotten married again, I made it my business to keep an eye on how he treated you. I've been documenting everything for months." "Again? He was married before?" Felicia's smile was grim. "Oh yes, Sonia Olivier, sweet girl, lasted about 4 years. Dean used almost identical tactics, isolated her from her support system, manipulated her business relationships, convinced her to make financial decisions that benefited him. When he was done with her, she walked away with nothing but debt." The pattern was becoming horrifyingly clear. Where is she now? Rebuilding her life in Denver. Took her 3 years to recover financially from Dean's games. She was willing to share her story when I reached out last month. I felt sick thinking about another woman who'd gone through this same experience. "Why didn't you warn me earlier?" "Would you have believed me 6 months ago? A bitter old aunt telling stories about your loving husband?" Felicia shook her head. "You had to see his true nature for yourself, but now that you have." She leaned forward intently. "Emily, I've spent 3 years planning my revenge against Dean Watson. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I have documentation of his financial manipulations, evidence of his pattern of fraud, connections he doesn't know about. But I'm 83 years old, and frankly, I don't have the energy to execute everything I've prepared. What are you saying? I'm saying you have a choice. You can sign those divorce papers, walk away with nothing, and let Dean continue destroying women's lives, or, she paused dramatically, you can help me take him down properly, and in the process, get back everything he's stolen from you and more. I looked around the empty house, thinking about my grandmother's mirror now decorating Lauren's condo, about my business Dean had sabotaged, about the years of my life I'd wasted trusting him. What would that involve? Felicia's eyes glittered with anticipation. First, we need to buy you some time. Those divorce papers don't have to be signed immediately, and I happen to know someone who can help you understand exactly what you're entitled to legally.
A lawyer? Better.
Someone who specializes in cases exactly like yours. She pulled out her phone. Her name is Sonia Olivier, Dean's first wife. She's built quite a career helping women who've been financially abused by their husbands. She owes me a favor, and she'd love to get some payback against Dean. The irony was perfect. Dean's first victim, now armed with legal expertise and a personal vendetta. Before we call her, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice, I need to know something. What exactly did you mean when you said I could get back everything he's stolen and more? Felicia's smile was absolutely predatory.
Oh, my dear Emily.
Dean has been very busy building his little empire with Lauren. New business ventures, joint investments, expensive purchases. He thinks he's untouchable. She opened the thick folder completely, revealing documents, photos, and financial records. But he's made some very serious mistakes, the kind that could destroy not just his finances, but his freedom. I stared at the evidence spread before me, feeling something shift inside my chest. Not just anger anymore, but determination. Call Sonia, I said firmly. Let's begin. Sonia Olivier answered on the second ring, her voice crisp and professional. Felicia, I was wondering when you'd call. I saw the social media posts about Dean's new anniversary celebration. How's our girl holding up? Felicia put the phone on speaker without asking me. She's stronger than she knows. Emily, meet Sonia. Sonia, meet wife number 2. Hello, Emily. Sonia's voice was warm but edged with steel. I'm sorry you're going through this, but I'm glad Felicia reached out. I've been building a case against Dean for 3 years, waiting for the right moment. Sounds like that moment has arrived. You've been building a case? I asked, still processing everything. For 3 years. Once I recovered from the financial and emotional devastation Dean put me through, I made it my mission to ensure he never did it to another woman. I became a divorce attorney specializing in financial abuse cases. Dean Watson has become something of an obsession. Felicia smiled approvingly. Show Emily what you've discovered, Sonia. I'm sending you access to a shared drive, Sonia said, and my phone pinged with a notification. What you're about to see will probably shock you, Emily. Dean's been much busier than either of us realized. I opened the link on my phone, and Felicia leaned in to see the screen. The first folder was labeled Property Fraud. Dean and Lauren have been house flipping together for over a year, Sonia explained as I scrolled through property records. Using your joint accounts and credit to finance purchases, then transferring ownership to shell companies, Lauren controls. On paper, you're liable for the debts, but you have no claim to the profits. My stomach dropped as I saw the numbers. 6 properties, all with mortgages totaling over $2 million, all with my forged signature on the loan applications. That's impossible, I whispered. I never signed these documents. Check the dates, Sonia instructed. Notice anything familiar? I looked closer. Every fraudulent signature was dated during one of my business trips, days when Dean had claimed to be working late or visiting family. He's been forging my signature for months, I said. The reality sinking in, but how did he get past the banks? They require ID verification. That's the beauty of it. Sonia's voice was bitter. Lauren works for Premier Realty, which has exclusive partnerships with 3 major lenders. She has access to expedited processing systems that bypass some of the usual verification steps, a few carefully placed friends in the banking industry, some altered documentation, and suddenly Emily Watson becomes a very active real estate investor. Felicia pulled out a magnifying glass from her purse, examining the signatures on my phone screen. These forgeries are quite good. Dean always was meticulous about details. The second folder is even more interesting, Sonia continued. Business embezzlement. I opened it to find records from Henry's old accounting firm, the one Dean had inherited. Client accounts, trust funds, business transactions that made no sense to me. Dean's been using his position as Henry's successor to embezzle from client accounts, Sonia explained. Small amounts at first, but it's escalated significantly in the past 6 months. He's been moving money through various accounts, using the property investments to launder the stolen funds. Henry would be horrified, Felicia whispered, her face pale. His reputation, his legacy. Dean's destroying everything my husband built. I kept scrolling, finding bank transfers that totaled hundreds of thousands of dollars. How did you get access to these records? I have a friend who works in forensic accounting. She flagged some suspicious patterns in transactions involving Dean's firm. Once we started digging deeper, Sonia paused. Emily, your husband isn't just a cheating manipulator, he's a criminal, a very sophisticated one. The third folder was labeled insurance fraud. With growing dread, I opened it. Last month, Dean increased your life insurance policy to $2 million, Sonia said quietly. He also changed the beneficiary from your parents to himself, using a power of attorney document I'm betting you don't remember signing. I never gave him power of attorney, I said, my voice barely audible. The signature analysis suggests otherwise. Very convincing forgery work. Sonia's tone was grim. Emily, I need you to be very careful over the next few weeks. Dean's pattern suggests he's planning an exit strategy that doesn't include you being around to contest anything. Felicia grabbed my hand. That's why I've been watching the house, dear. I was worried about your safety. You think he'd actually? I couldn't finish the sentence. I think Dean Watson is a sociopath who sees people as obstacles or assets, Sonia replied bluntly. You've served your purpose as a financial scapegoat, and now you're potentially a liability who knows too much. I thought about the unlocked front door, the missing security system, Dean's insistence that I come home early from my trip. A chill ran down my spine. What do? I asked, looking at the overwhelming evidence of Dean's crimes spread across my phone screen. First, you don't sign those divorce papers, Sonia said firmly. Not until we've had a chance to file criminal charges and freeze all the assets Dean thinks he's hidden. Second, Felicia added, we document everything, every conversation, every interaction with Dean or Lauren. From this moment forward, you assume you're dealing with dangerous criminals. And third, Sonia continued, we contact my friend at the FBI. What Dean's been doing crosses state lines and involves multiple federal crimes. This is bigger than divorce court now. I looked at Felicia, this tiny elderly woman who'd been meticulously planning revenge for 3 years, then thought about Sonia, who'd rebuilt her life and career around stopping Dean from hurting anyone else. There's something else, I said slowly, remembering something Dean had said weeks ago. Dean mentioned that Lauren had some big investment opportunity coming up, something about a commercial development deal that would set them up for life. Both women went quiet. Emily, Sonia said carefully. When did he say this? 2 weeks ago. He seemed excited but secretive about it. Said it was Lauren's biggest commission ever. Felicia and I heard typing on Sonia's end of the call. Oh my God, Sonia whispered. Emily, I think they're planning to liquidate everything and disappear. There's a property deal scheduled to close next Friday for $12 million. Lauren's the listing agent, and Dean's firm is handling the escrow. The pieces clicked into place with terrifying clarity. The rushed divorce papers, the life insurance policy, Dean's encouragement for me to come home early. They're not just stealing from me, I said, understanding flooding through me. They're planning to take everything and run. But first, they need to tie up loose ends, Felicia finished grimly. And you, my dear, are a very big loose end. The silence stretched as the implications of what we'd discovered settled over us. I was still staring at my phone, at the evidence of Dean's elaborate criminal enterprise, when Felicia suddenly stood and walked to the front window. "Emily dear," she said quietly, peering through the curtains, "what kind of car does Lauren drive?" "A white BMW SUV, why?" "Because there's one parked across the street that's been there since I arrived 2 hours ago. The driver's been watching the house." My blood turned to ice. Sonia's voice came through the phone speaker with renewed urgency. "Emily, listen to me carefully. Do not panic, but you need to assume you're under surveillance." "Felicia, can you see the license plate?" Felicia adjusted her position at the window. "Wisconsin plates, starts with ABK. I can't make out the rest from this angle." "That's Lauren's car," I confirmed, my voice shaking. "She's watching me, which means they know you're home early," Sonia said grimly. "And they know you've seen the divorce papers. Emily, I need you to act completely normal. Don't let them know we're onto them." Felicia moved away from the window and sat back down, her expression thoughtful. "This actually works in our favor, dear. If they're watching you, it means they're nervous. Nervous people make mistakes." "How is being stalked working in my favor?" I asked, trying to keep the hysteria out of my voice. "Because, my dear Emily, they don't know what I know, and they certainly don't know what I've been planning." Felicia opened her large purse and pulled out what looked like a small recording device. "I've been documenting Dean's activities for much longer than 3 years." She pressed play, and Dean's voice filled the room, crystal clear. "The old bitch will be dead within 2 years anyway. Cancer's already spreading to her liver. Once she's gone, I'll contest Henry's original will and get the rest of the business assets." I gasped. "When did you record this?" 6 months after Henry died. Dean was at the house, supposedly checking on me, but really cataloging what else he could steal. Felicia's eyes were hard as diamonds. "He thought I was napping upstairs." "I wasn't." She fast-forwarded to another section. "Emily's so trusting it's almost boring. Sonia at least put up a fight when she figured out what was happening. This one just believes everything I tell her." The casual cruelty in his voice made me nauseous. Sonia's voice came through the phone. "Felicia, please tell me you have more recordings like this." "Oh, I have hours of material." Dean's been very chatty over the years, especially when he thinks he's talking to Lauren privately. Felicia pulled out a small tablet and showed us a list of audio files. Phone calls, conversations in restaurants, even some video footage from the security cameras I had installed after Henry died. "Security cameras?" I asked. "Hidden ones. Dean doesn't know they exist." She scrolled through the files. "Here's one from last month when Dean brought Lauren to the house to appraise my antiques." The video showed Dean and Lauren in Felicia's living room, examining furniture and artwork, but the audio was what made my stomach churn. "This mirror alone is worth $15,000, Lauren was saying. "And that china cabinet, we could get 20 for it easy." "Don't get greedy," Dean replied. "We take the small valuable stuff first. After the old bat dies, we'll come back for the furniture." Lauren laughed. "What about Emily? Think she'll cause problems?" "Emily won't be a problem much longer," Dean said, and something in his tone made my blood freeze. "I've got plans for her." "What kind of plans?" "The kind that make widowers very wealthy." I felt Felicia's hand grip mine as we listened to Dean and Lauren discuss my death like a business transaction. They debated methods, making it look like an accident, timing it after the divorce papers were signed to avoid suspicion, even how long Dean should wait before marrying Lauren publicly. "Turn it off," I whispered, unable to listen anymore. Felicia stopped the recording and studied my face. "Now you understand why I've been so careful, dear. This isn't just about money. Dean has escalated far beyond financial fraud." Sonia's voice was tight with controlled anger. "Felicia, we need to get that evidence to the FBI immediately. Those recordings constitute conspiracy to commit murder. Already copied and stored in multiple locations." Felicia replied smoothly, "Including a safety deposit box Dean doesn't know about, and a trusted friend in Florida. If anything happens to me or Emily, the evidence automatically gets released to law enforcement and the media." I stared at this tiny elderly woman with new respect. "You've been planning this for years." "My dear, I've been planning this since the day Dean convinced Henry to cut me out of the business, but I needed the right moment, and the right partner. She squeezed my hand. Dean's pattern is to isolate and destroy his victims, but this time, he picked the wrong victim because she has allies he doesn't know about. The white SUV just drove away, Felicia noted, glancing at the window again, probably reporting back that you're home and appeared normal, which gives us some time, Sonia said. Emily, I need you to do something that's going to be very difficult. You need to act like nothing has changed. If Dean contacts you, you respond normally. If he comes to the house, you behave like a confused, heartbroken wife. I don't know if I can do that, I admitted. Knowing what I know now, you can, Felicia said firmly. Because every moment you keep them believing they're in control is another moment we have to build our case. And Emily, we're going to destroy them so completely they'll wish they'd never heard your name. She opened another file on her tablet. Dean thinks he's been clever, but he's left a trail of evidence that will put him away for decades. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, attempted murder. He's going to prison for the rest of his life. What about Lauren? She's been an active participant in everything. She'll go down with him. Sonia's voice was satisfied. I've been building cases against real estate professionals who facilitate this kind of fraud. Lauren Watson is going to become a textbook example of professional misconduct. I felt something shifting inside me, the fear and shock transforming into something harder and more focused. What do you need me to do? Felicia smiled, and for the first time since I'd met her, it wasn't sharp or knowing. It was proud. There's my girl. First we need to set some traps. Dean will try to contact you soon, probably to gauge your emotional state and ensure you're going to sign those papers quietly. He'll want to play the caring husband one more time, Sonia added. Make you feel like the divorce is mutual, maybe even your idea. Classic manipulation. Let him, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. I want to hear what lies he tells me. Felicia clapped her hands once, a sharp sound of approval. Excellent. Now let's discuss the plan. We have exactly 1 week before that $12 million deal closes, and they disappear forever. 7 days to gather the final evidence we need, and spring our trap. She pulled out a legal pad and began writing. By this time next week, Dean Watson and Lauren Watson will be in federal custody, and you, my dear Emily, will be free to rebuild your life with more resources than you ever imagined. I looked at this remarkable woman, then thought about Sonia on the phone, both of them united in their determination to stop Dean from destroying another life. Then let's begin, I said, and meant it completely. Before we can spring any trap, Felicia said, settling back into her chair with the legal pad, you need to understand the full scope of what Dean's been doing, not just to you, but to others. She pulled out a thick accordion folder I hadn't noticed before. I've been collecting evidence for 3 years, but it goes back much further than that. The first document she handed me was a marriage certificate dated 8 years ago. Dean's first marriage wasn't to Sonia, she said quietly. There was another woman before her, Damon Jones, a widow with 2 young children. What happened to her? Suspicious car accident after 18 months of marriage. Dean walked away with her life insurance, her children's trust funds, and her house. The police ruled it accidental, but, Felicia shrugged. Too many coincidences. Sonia's voice came through the speaker grim. I never knew about Damon. Felicia, why didn't you tell me? Because I wasn't certain until recently, but I hired a private investigator 6 months ago, and he confirmed my suspicions. Felicia showed me photos from the investigator's report. Dean has been perfecting this pattern for over a decade. Find vulnerable women, isolate them, gain control of their finances, then dispose of them when they're no longer useful. The photos showed Dean with various women over the years, all fitting a similar profile, successful, independent, but somehow vulnerable. Recent widows, women going through career transitions, those without strong family support systems. He's a serial predator, I whispered, studying the faces of women who looked so much like me. Exactly. And Lauren isn't just his girlfriend, she's his accomplice. She's been part of this operation for at least 2 years. Felicia opened another section of the folder. Here are bank records showing payments from Dean to Lauren, that predate their supposed romantic relationship by 18 months. I examined the financial documents, regular monthly payments of $5,000, listed as consulting fees but with no corresponding business documentation. She was being paid to help him target and manipulate women, Sonia said, her voice horrified. Emily, you weren't randomly selected. You were researched, studied, and specifically chosen. Felicia nodded grimly. Lauren had access to real estate records, financial information, personal details through her work. She identified women who met Dean's criteria, newly single, financially stable but not wealthy enough to afford top-tier legal representation, isolated from family or strong support networks. That's how he knew about my father's death and the inheritance, I realized, and why he pushed so hard for us to get married quickly after that. Your grief made you vulnerable, and the $30,000 made you worth the effort, Felicia confirmed. But Dean got greedier with you. Instead of the usual quick disposal, he decided to use you as a long-term financial cover for his escalating crimes. She showed me a timeline she'd created, mapping Dean's activities over the past 5 years. The property fraud started small, one house, using fake documentation. But when he realized how easy it was with Lauren's help, the operation expanded rapidly. Look at this pattern, Sonia added. I could hear her typing. I'm cross-referencing the dates Felicia sent me with some suspicious real estate transactions I've been tracking. Dean and Lauren have been running this scam in 3 different states. The scope was staggering. Property purchases in Wisconsin, Illinois, and Minnesota, all using variations of the same fraudulent documentation method. Shell companies, forged signatures, and exploited banking relationships that Lauren had cultivated over years in the real estate industry. The total value of their fraud is approaching $20 million, Felicia said, showing me a spreadsheet of calculations. But here's the brilliant part. Most of it is structured so the original victims are liable for the debts while Dean and Lauren control the assets. That's why they need me alive just long enough to sign the divorce papers, I understood. Once I'm legally separated from Dean, I become solely responsible for all the joint debts they've created in my name. And then Felicia's voice was deadly quiet. You become a liability who could expose everything. So you have your accident. Dean plays the grieving widower, inherits your life insurance, and he and Lauren disappear with their $20 million. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. Dean's name appeared on the screen. Perfect timing, Sonia said. Emily, answer it. Act normal, but remember, we're recording everything now. Felicia held up a small device she'd attached to my phone while we were talking. I took a deep breath and answered. Dean, oh thank God I've been trying to reach you all day. Hey babe. His voice was warm, concerned, exactly the way it used to be when I believed he loved me. I'm so sorry about the confusion. I had to leave suddenly for a business emergency. Didn't you get my note? I found papers on the counter. Dean, what's going on? I know how it must look, Em, but we need to talk in person. Can I come home? I can explain everything. I looked at Felicia, who was nodding encouragingly while making notes on her legal pad. Yes, I said, injecting just the right amount of hope and confusion into my voice. Please come home. I don't understand what's happening. I'll be there in an hour. And Emily, don't worry about those papers. We'll figure this out together, okay? After I hung up, the room was silent for a moment. He's coming here, I said unnecessarily. Good, Felicia said, her eyes bright with anticipation. Let's see what lies he's prepared for you. 1 hour, Felicia said, checking her watch as she began efficiently packing away the evidence folders. That gives us just enough time to prepare properly for Dean's performance. What do you mean? I asked, watching her transform from conspirator back to harmless elderly aunt with practiced ease. Dean will come here expecting to find a broken, confused wife who'll sign anything he puts in front of her, Sonia explained through the phone. Instead, he's walking into a carefully orchestrated trap. Felicia pulled out what looked like a small jewelry box from her purse. This contains micro-recording devices, completely undetectable. We'll place them strategically around the room where Dean will feel most comfortable lying to you. You carry surveillance equipment in your purse, my dear. I've been preparing for this confrontation for 3 years. I carry everything I might need. She opened the box to reveal devices no bigger than buttons. Henry always said the key to catching a criminal was letting them think they were the smartest person in the room. As Felicia began placing the recording devices, I realized how thoroughly she'd planned this moment. You knew Dean would call today, didn't you? I suspected. Dean's patterns are quite predictable once you study them. The divorce papers were meant to shock you into compliance, but when you didn't immediately call him in a panic, he'd need to switch to manipulation mode. Sonia's voice carried a note of admiration. Felicia, you've essentially been running a 3-year undercover operation. That's FBI-level planning. Henry taught me to be thorough in everything, Felicia replied, adjusting a device behind a picture frame. Besides, I had excellent motivation. Dean destroyed my husband's reputation and legacy. He stole from elderly clients who trusted Henry for decades. This is personal. I watched her work, marveling at the precision of her movements. What did Henry think of Dean originally? Felicia's expression softened. Henry saw potential in that boy. Dean was bright, charming, seemed genuinely interested in learning the business. We paid for his education, helped him get licensed, treated him like the son we never had. When did things change? Gradually at first, small discrepancies in client accounts that Dean always had reasonable explanations for. Client complaints about billing issues that somehow got resolved before reaching Henry directly. Then Henry got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and suddenly Dean was indispensable. She placed the final device, then sat back down with a heavy sigh. The chemotherapy made Henry confused sometimes, forgetful. Dean used those moments to convince him that I was becoming unreliable, that the business needed younger leadership. By the time I realized what was happening, Henry had already changed his will. That must have been devastating. The betrayal was worse than losing the business, Felicia admitted. Henry died, believing I was no longer capable of handling our life's work. Dean made sure of that. Through the phone, Sonia cleared her throat. Ladies, we need to focus on the immediate situation. Emily, when Dean arrives, your job is to seem vulnerable but not suspicious. Ask questions that a hurt wife would ask, but don't reveal any knowledge of his crimes. What kind of questions? Why he wants a divorce, whether there's someone else. What happens to your future together? Felicia suggested. Let him lie to you. The more lies he tells on recording, the stronger our case becomes. I felt a flutter of panic. What if I mess this up? What if he suspects something? You won't, Felicia said firmly. Because you're not acting, Emily. Part of you is still that hurt, confused wife. Use those real emotions, just don't let them control you. Think of it as method acting, Sonia added. The grief and betrayal you feel are genuine. Just don't reveal the knowledge and anger underneath. A car pulled into the driveway. Dean's BMW. He's here, I said, my heart racing. Remember, Felicia whispered, quickly gathering the last of her papers into her purse. I'm just a concerned aunt who came to check on you. I found you crying over the divorce papers and stayed to offer comfort. What about our phone call with Sonia? Never happened. I've been here the whole time making tea and listening to you cry. Felicia moved to the kitchen and quickly put a kettle on the stove. Sonia, stay on the line but mute yourself unless it's an emergency. Dean's key turned in the front door. Emily, I'm home. I took a shaky breath and walked to meet him, letting my genuine hurt show on my face. He looked exactly the same. Tall, handsome, with those warm brown eyes that had once made me feel so safe. Now they just reminded me of a predator sizing up prey. Dean, I said, my voice catching. I don't understand what's happening. He pulled me into his arms, and I fought not to recoil. I know, baby. I'm so sorry you had to find out this way. I never wanted to hurt you. Over his shoulder, I saw Felicia in the kitchen doorway, watching with sharp eyes as Dean began his final manipulation. Aunt Felicia's been keeping me company, I said, pulling back to look at his face. I've been so confused. Dean's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. That was thoughtful of her. He looked past me to where Felicia stood. Aunt Felicia, thank you for taking care of Emily. Families should look after each other, she replied mildly, though her eyes never left his face. Though I suppose your definition of family has changed recently. Dean's smile faltered for just a moment before snapping back into place. Why don't we sit down, Emily? We need to talk. Dean settled onto the couch where I'd been sitting earlier, patting the cushion beside him in a gesture that once would have felt loving but now seemed calculated. I sat down, maintaining the exact distance a confused wife might, close enough to show I still cared, far enough to show I was hurt. Emily, I know this is shocking, he began, his voice taking on that gentle, reasonable tone I'd heard so many times. But we both know our marriage hasn't been working for a while. I don't know that, I said, letting genuine confusion creep into my voice. I thought we were happy. We were planning to start a family next year. From the kitchen, I could see Felicia moving quietly, making tea as promised, but I knew she was listening to every word. Sweetheart, be honest with yourself, Dean continued, reaching for my hand. How often are we actually together anymore? You're always traveling for work. I'm busy with the firm. We've grown apart, because you encouraged me to take those contracts, I said, pulling my hand away. You said it would be good for my career. A flash of irritation crossed his features before disappearing. I was trying to be supportive, but Emily, you have to admit, you've been distant, focused on everything except our relationship. I recognize the technique now, thanks to Sonia's earlier explanations. He was rewriting our history, making my dedication to saving our finances after the business troubles he'd caused seem like neglect of our marriage. Is there someone else? I asked, the question every betrayed spouse eventually asks. Dean's hesitation lasted exactly 2 seconds too long. Emily, this isn't about another person. This is about us not being compatible anymore. That's not an answer. There might be someone I've developed feelings for, he said carefully. But that's not why I want the divorce. I want the divorce because we both deserve to be happy. Felicia appeared with a tea tray, setting it on the coffee table with gentle precision. I'll just leave this here for you both, she said softly. Emily, dear, I should probably head home soon. Please don't go, I said, grabbing her hand. The gesture wasn't entirely an act. I genuinely didn't want to be alone, with Dean knowing what I now knew about his past wives. Actually, Aunt Felicia, Dean said, his tone carefully respectful. Maybe it would be better if Emily and I had some privacy for this conversation. Oh, I understand completely, Felicia replied, but made no move to leave. I just worry about Emily being alone right now. She's been so upset since she found those papers. Dean's eyes sharpened slightly. How long have you been here? Since about 3 this afternoon, Felicia said innocently. I was in the neighborhood, and thought I'd stop by to see how you both were doing. Found poor Emily crying in the kitchen, and you've been here the whole time. Well, where else would I go? The poor girl was beside herself. Felicia's performance was flawless, the concerned aunt who'd simply been in the right place at the right time. Dean relaxed slightly, but I caught him glancing around the room, his eyes lingering on areas where Felicia had placed recording devices. Emily, he said, turning back to me, I know the papers seem harsh, but my lawyer said it was best to be straightforward about the division of assets. Division of assets, I repeated. Dean, according to these papers, I get nothing. Not even half of what we've built together. Sweetheart, you haven't built anything together. Your business has been struggling for months. I've been covering most of our expenses. The lie was delivered so smoothly, with such apparent concern for my feelings, that if I hadn't known the truth, I might have believed him. What about the house? I pressed. We both put money into the mortgage. Emily, be realistic. Your contributions have been minimal compared to mine, and with your business problems, you wouldn't be able to maintain the payments anyway. My business problems that you helped create slipped out before I could stop myself. His expression sharpened. What do you mean by that? I realized I'd made an error and quickly backtracked. Nothing. Those client issues last year were so stressful, and I know I wasn't handling things well. That's exactly my point, Dean said, his voice gentler again. You've been under too much pressure. This divorce will actually be good for you. A fresh start without the financial burdens you can't handle. Felicia made a soft sound from the kitchen that could have been sympathy or disgust. When do you need me to sign these? I asked, picking up the divorce papers. There's no rush, Dean said, but I caught the eager note in his voice. Take a few days to think about it. But Emily, dragging this out won't change anything. It'll just make it harder for both of us. Where will you go? I'll stay with a friend for now, give you space to process everything. He stood up, checking his watch. I should let you rest. This has been a lot for one day. As he moved toward the door, I made a decision that surprised me. Dean, the woman you have feelings for, is it Lauren from your office? He froze, his back to me. When he turned around, his expression was carefully composed. Emily, let's not make this more painful than it needs to be. It is her, isn't it? Yes, he said finally. But Emily, this isn't her fault. These feelings just developed naturally over time. How long? Does it matter? It matters to me. He sighed, as if my need to know was unreasonable. A few months, but we haven't acted on anything. I swear, I wanted to handle this divorce properly first. The lie was so breathtaking in its scope that I almost laughed. Instead, I nodded as if accepting it. Will you think about signing the papers? He asked gently. For both our sakes, I'll think about it, I promised. After Dean left, Felicia and I sat in silence for a full minute before she pulled out her phone and unmuted Sonia. Did you get all of that? Felicia asked. Every word, Sonia replied grimly. And Emily, you did beautifully. He just perjured himself about 6 different times. Phase 1 complete, Felicia said, carefully removing the recording devices from around the room. Dean's given us exactly what we needed, documented lies about the timeline, his relationship with Lauren, and his financial claims. Sonia's voice through the phone was energized. Those contradictions about not acting on anything, when we have evidence of their relationship going back months, will destroy his credibility in court. But now comes the tricky part, which is, I asked, still processing, how smoothly Dean had lied to my face. We need to make them think they're winning while we gather the final evidence, Felicia explained, settling back into her chair. Dean expects you to be emotional and irrational for the next few days. We're going to use that expectation against him. She pulled out a fresh legal pad and began sketching what looked like a timeline. Tomorrow, you'll call Dean. You'll be upset about sleeping alone in the house, confused about your future. You'll ask questions that an abandoned wife would ask. What kind of questions? Whether you can keep some of the furniture, what happens to your joint credit cards, if you can afford to stay in the house until you find somewhere else to live, Sonia suggested. Meanwhile, we'll be documenting every lie he tells you. But what's the end goal? We already have evidence of his crimes. Felicia's smile was predatory. The end goal is to get him to incriminate Lauren directly. Right now, Dean could claim Lauren was an innocent victim of his manipulation. We need her on record as an active participant. How do we do that? By making Dean desperate enough to involve her in cleaning up loose ends, Sonia explained. Emily, I need you to call your bank tomorrow and express confusion about some large transactions. Don't accuse anyone of anything. Just act like you're trying to understand your financial situation for the divorce. I felt a chill of understanding. You want them to know I'm looking at the accounts. Exactly. When Dean realizes you might discover the property fraud, he'll panic. And when people panic, they make mistakes. Felicia opened her tablet and showed me a secure messaging app. We'll stay in constant contact through this. Encrypted, untraceable. Every conversation you have with Dean, or anyone connected to him, needs to be documented. What about my safety? If they realize I'm onto them, you won't be alone, Felicia assured me. I'm moving into the guest room upstairs tonight. As far as anyone knows, I'm just a concerned aunt helping you through a difficult divorce, and I'll have surveillance on the house by tomorrow morning, Sonia added. A friend of mine runs a private security company, completely discreet, but you'll be protected. I looked around the house that no longer felt like home, thinking about the performance I'd have to maintain. How long do we keep this up? Until next Friday, Felicia said firmly. The day before Dean and Lauren's $12 million deal closes, that's when we spring the trap. My phone buzzed with a text from Dean, thinking of you. I know this is hard, but it's for the best. Sleep well. Perfect timing, Sonia observed. Respond like a confused, hurt wife would. I typed back, I don't understand how we got here. Can we talk tomorrow? His response came immediately. Of course. I'll call you in the morning. Try to get some rest. Phase 2 begins now, Felicia announced, standing up with more energy than I'd seen from her all day. Emily, I need you to go through this house and photograph everything that's missing or moved. Dean took more than just the obvious items. As I began documenting the absent items, I started noticing things I'd missed in my initial shock. Family photos that had included my parents were gone, but ones with Dean's family remained. Personal items with sentimental value had vanished. My grandmother's jewelry box, my father's watch collection, even the Afghan my mother had crocheted for our first anniversary. He's been planning this extraction for months, I realized, showing Felicia the photos. This wasn't a sudden decision after meeting Lauren.
No, it wasn't.
Dean's pattern is to systematically remove all traces of his victims before disposing of them. Felicia examined the images on my phone, but he made one crucial error.
Yint.
She pointed to a photo of our bedroom dresser, where an expensive watch still sat in its case. That's a Rolex, isn't it? Worth about $15,000. Dean's birthday gift from last year. He never wears it, just likes having it. He left it because he plans to come back for it, Felicia said with certainty. Along with anything else too valuable to abandon, but too risky to take now. He's not done with this house, Emily.
The implication sent a chill down my spine.
You think he'll come back? I think Dean Watson is a creature of habit, and one of his habits is cleaning up loose ends. Felicia's expression was grim.
Which is why we need to be ready for him.
As we finished cataloging the missing items, my phone rang. Unknown number.
Don't answer it.
Felicia advised quickly. Let it go to voicemail. The voicemail notification came a minute later. I played it on speaker. Emily, this is Lauren Watson from Premier Realty. I know this is difficult timing, but I wanted to reach out about some properties that might be affected by your divorce proceedings. Could we meet for coffee tomorrow? I think there are some things you should know. Felicia and I stared at each other. She's making contact, Sonia said through the phone. This is either very good or very dangerous. It's both, Felicia replied grimly. Emily, Lauren just gave us the opening we need. But from this moment forward, you're walking into the lion's den. I looked at the voicemail, thinking about the woman who'd been planning my death while stealing my husband and my life. Set up the meeting, I said firmly. It's time to look my would-be killer in the eye. Absolutely not. Sonia's voice crackled through the phone with alarm. Emily, meeting Lauren alone is exactly what they want. You'd be giving them the perfect opportunity to what? I interrupted, surprising myself with my calm tone. Kill me in a public coffee shop. Lauren's too smart for that. She wants to manipulate me, not murder me in broad daylight. Felicia was studying me with those sharp eyes. What are you thinking, dear? I'm thinking Lauren wouldn't risk reaching out unless she was worried about something. Maybe Dean told her I seemed suspicious, or maybe they've discovered I haven't signed the divorce papers yet. I paced to the window, checking for the white BMW. Either way, she's taking a risk by contacting me directly, which makes her dangerous, Sonia insisted. Or desperate, I countered. Felicia, you said Dean's pattern was to keep his victims isolated from anyone who might interfere, but Lauren's breaking that pattern by approaching me herself. Felicia nodded slowly. You're right, this is unprecedented behavior. In all my research, Dean never allowed direct contact between his accomplices and his targets, so either Lauren's gone rogue, or something's changed in their timeline, I concluded. Either way, we need to know what she wants. I called Lauren's number back, putting it on speaker so Felicia could hear. Emily, Lauren's voice was warm, sympathetic. Thank you so much for calling back. I can only imagine how difficult this must be for you. It's been a shock, I managed, channeling genuine hurt into my voice. Dean mentioned you two had developed feelings for each other. I'm so sorry about the timing of everything. I never wanted you to get caught in the middle of this situation. The audacity of her lie was breathtaking. This woman had spent months planning my death, and now she was playing the concerned other woman. "What did you want to meet about?" I asked. "There are some business matters that could affect your divorce settlement. Properties that Dean might not have mentioned to you. I think you deserve to know about them before you sign anything." Felicia's eyebrows shot up. This was unexpected. "What kind of properties?" "It's complicated. Real estate investments that were made in your name. Look, Emily, I know you probably hate me right now, but I genuinely want to make sure you're protected legally. Can we meet tomorrow? Maybe that little cafe on Blue Mound Road around 10. I looked at Felicia, who was taking notes rapidly. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll be there." "Thank you, Emily. And please don't mention this to Dean yet. I want to explain everything to you first, before he gets involved." After I hung up, the room was quiet for a long moment. "She's planning something," Felicia said finally. "But what?" "Maybe they're accelerating their timeline," Sonia suggested. "If they're worried about Emily discovering the property fraud, they might be trying to get ahead of it." Or, I said, a terrible thought occurring to me, she's planning to pin everything on Dean. Make herself look like another victim who was manipulated by him. Felicia's eyes widened. That would be brilliant, actually. If Lauren could convince a jury that Dean forced her into helping with the fraud, she might escape the worst of the charges. And I'd be the sympathetic ex-wife who confirms her story, I realized. She'd need me alive for that to work, at least until after Dean was convicted. Which explains why she's willing to reveal the property investments, Sonia added grimly. She's going to make it look like she's protecting you from Dean's schemes. I felt a surge of anger at the calculated nature of it all. So what do I do? Play along with her act? Yes, Felicia said firmly. But we modify the plan. Emily, you're going to wear a wire to that meeting. We need Lauren on record discussing those properties and her relationship with Dean. Won't she be suspicious if I'm too eager to accept her help? Not if you play it right. You'll be hurt, confused, maybe a little desperate for someone to explain what's happening to your life. Lauren will think she's manipulating you into being her ally against Dean. My phone buzzed with a text from Dean. "How are you holding up? I know today was hard." "Perfect," Felicia said, reading over my shoulder. "Respond normally, but don't mention Lauren's call." I typed, still processing everything. "This house feels so empty without you." His response was immediate. "I'm sorry, Em. I know this isn't easy. We'll talk more tomorrow." "He has no idea Lauren contacted you," Sonia observed. "Which means she's acting independently. That's either very good for us, or very dangerous." "There's one way to find out," I said, setting my phone aside. "Felicia, do you have any of those recording devices small enough that I could wear without Lauren noticing?" She smiled approvingly. "My dear, I have equipment Lauren's never seen before. Tomorrow she's going to tell us exactly what she and Dean have been planning, and she'll do it in her own words. What if she realizes I'm recording her? Then we'll know we've pushed too hard too fast." Felicia replied pragmatically. "But Emily, if Lauren is planning to betray Dean, this meeting could be our chance to turn her into our witness instead of our enemy. And if she's not planning to betray him, then tomorrow morning, we find out exactly how they plan to kill you." Felicia said bluntly. "Either way, we'll have our answers." I looked at this remarkable woman who'd become my unlikely ally, then thought about the coffee meeting that could change everything. Then let's find out which side of this war Lauren Watson is really on. The next morning arrived gray and drizzling, matching my mood as Felicia helped me prepare for the meeting with Lauren. She'd produced a recording device so small it looked like a shirt button, complete with a tiny wire that ran invisibly under my sweater. "Remember," she said, adjusting the device one final time, "Lauren thinks she's the predator in this situation. Let her feel in control while she reveals her hand." "What if this goes wrong?" I asked, checking my appearance in the hallway mirror. I looked appropriately distraught, dark circles under my eyes, hair slightly unkempt, the general appearance of a woman whose world had just collapsed. "It won't," Felicia said, with confidence that I wished I shared. "But if something feels wrong, if Lauren says anything that makes you uncomfortable, you leave immediately." Sonia's security team will be positioned around the cafe. My phone rang. Sonia. Emily. I need to tell you something before you leave, she said without preamble. I spent all night digging deeper into Lauren's background, and what I found changes everything. What do you mean? Lauren Watson isn't just Dean's accomplice, she's his business partner in a much larger operation. I found corporate filings that show they've been running this real estate scam in 7 states, not 3. The total fraud is closer to $50 million. I sank onto the couch, the number too large to comprehend. 50 million? And that's just what I can trace. Emily, you're not dealing with a simple affair and divorce scheme. You're dealing with a sophisticated criminal enterprise that's been operating for at least 5 years. Felicia took the phone from me. Sonia, does this change our approach to the meeting? Actually, it might work in our favor. If Lauren's trying to distance herself from Dean, she'll need to provide significant evidence of his crimes to save herself. She might be more willing to reveal details than we originally thought. Or, I said, finding my voice again, she might be more dangerous than we thought because she has more to lose. That's why I've positioned 3 agents around the cafe, Sonia assured me. Former FBI, all armed, all with clear sightlines to where you'll be sitting. If Lauren tries anything, they'll intervene immediately. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in the corner booth at Blue Mound Cafe, nursing a coffee I couldn't taste while watching the door. Lauren arrived exactly on time, looking professionally sympathetic in a tailored black coat and understated makeup. Emily, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. Thank you so much for meeting me. I know this can't be easy. Up close, Lauren was prettier than her social media photos suggested, with the kind of polished confidence that came from success and careful grooming. She was also younger than I'd realized, probably early 30s, a full decade younger than Dean. I don't really understand why you wanted to meet, I said, letting confusion color my voice. Dean said you two just developed feelings recently. Lauren's smile faltered slightly. Emily, I think Dean has been less than honest with you about several things. That's actually why I wanted to talk. She pulled out a tablet and opened what looked like a financial document. I need to show you something that could significantly impact your divorce settlement. The document was a property deed with my forged signature, but Lauren presented it as if she'd just discovered it herself. Emily, did you know you own a commercial property in Kenosha worth $1.2 million? I stared at the document, letting shock register on my face. I've never seen this before in my life. I was afraid of that, Lauren said, her voice taking on a concerned tone. Emily, I think Dean has been using your identity to make property investments without your knowledge. This is just one of several properties I've found. She showed me 5 more deeds, all with variations of my forged signature, all for properties worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is fraud, I whispered, which was absolutely true. Yes, it is. And Emily, if these properties are foreclosed on or if there are any legal issues, you could be held liable for millions in debt. Lauren leaned forward, her expression earnest. I found these documents when I was helping Dean organize some files for a client. I realized what he'd been doing, and I couldn't let you walk into this divorce without knowing. The performance was masterful. If I hadn't known the truth, I would have been grateful to this woman for protecting me from my husband's crimes. Why would Dean do this? I asked. I think he's been planning this divorce for a long time, Emily. And I think he's been setting up these property investments as a way to hide assets while making you liable for any problems. She pulled out another document. There's more. Emily, did you know Dean has been transferring money from your joint accounts into offshore investments? This was news to me. I looked at the bank statements she showed me, seeing transfers I'd never authorized to accounts I'd never heard of. Cayman Islands, Lauren explained. Completely legal to invest there, but the timing is suspicious. These transfers accelerated significantly after your father passed away, and you deposited that inheritance. He's been stealing from me systematically, I said, letting real anger creep into my voice. I'm afraid so. And Emily, there's something else you need to know. Lauren's voice dropped to almost a whisper. Dean's done this before. To other women. What do you mean? I shouldn't be telling you this, but I found records of similar property schemes involving his previous relationships. Emily, you're not his first victim. I stared at her, marveling at how she was revealing the truth while completely inverting her role in it. What should I do? I asked. Lauren reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Don't sign those divorce papers, not until we can protect you legally from these property liabilities. I have a lawyer friend who specializes in fraud cases. Will you let me help you? Why would you help me? I asked. The question any reasonable person would ask. You're in love with my husband. For the first time, Lauren looked genuinely uncomfortable. Emily, I care about Dean, but I can't stand by and watch him destroy your life. This isn't about love anymore. It's about what's right. I nodded slowly, as if making a difficult decision. Okay, I said finally. Help me. The drive back from the cafe felt surreal. Lauren had spent an hour meticulously documenting Dean's crimes while positioning herself as my savior, and I'd played the grateful, naive victim perfectly. But as I pulled into my driveway, I saw Felicia's car was gone, replaced by an ambulance and 2 police cars. My blood turned to ice. I ran toward the house, but a paramedic intercepted me. Ma'am, are you Emily Watson? Yes. What happened? Where's Felicia? Mrs. Olivier collapsed about an hour ago. Possible heart attack. We're taking her to Froedtert Hospital. Is she? She's stable, but it's serious. She asked us to tell you she left something important in the guest room. As the ambulance pulled away, one of the police officers approached me. Mrs. Watson, we need to ask you a few questions. Mrs. Olivier was found by a neighbor who heard her calling for help. Do you know if she has any medical conditions? Not that she mentioned, I said, my mind racing. Felicia had seemed perfectly healthy this morning. Can I see her? The family is on their way to the hospital. You might want to check with them. After the police left, I stood in my empty house, feeling utterly alone for the first time since Felicia had appeared in my living room. Without her guidance, the weight of what I was attempting felt overwhelming. I climbed the stairs to the guest room, finding a manila envelope on the nightstand, with my name written in Felicia's precise handwriting. Inside was a letter and a key. Emily, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. I pray it's just my old heart finally protesting. But given the circumstances, we must assume the worst. The key opens a safety deposit box at First National Bank on Capitol Drive, box 247. Inside you'll find copies of all our evidence, plus some additional insurance I haven't told you about yet. More importantly, you'll find a video confession I recorded 3 days ago, explaining everything we've discovered, and my role in investigating Dean. If something happens to me, this confession will ensure our evidence isn't dismissed as the ramblings of a sick old woman. Emily, you are stronger than you know. You've already proven that by gaining Lauren's trust today, but now you must be even stronger. Trust Sonia, trust the evidence, and trust yourself. Don't let them win. All my love, Felicia. P.S. Check the recording from today's meeting immediately. Lauren revealed more than she intended. My hand shaking, I called Sonia. Emily, how did the meeting go? I've been waiting. Felicia's in the hospital, I interrupted. Possible heart attack. She left me a letter saying we need to assume the worst. Silence for a moment. Where are you now? At home. Sonia, what if they somehow caused this? What if they figured out what Felicia was doing? Emily, listen to me carefully. Are you alone in the house? Yes. Get out. Now. Go to the hospital. Go to a friend's house. Go anywhere but there. If someone targeted Felicia, you could be next. I grabbed the key and Felicia's letter, then paused. Sonia, Felicia said Lauren revealed more than she intended today. What if the recording shows something crucial? We can analyze it later. Right now I need you safe. No, I said, surprising myself with my firmness. Felicia risked everything for this. I'm not running away now. I found the recording device where Felicia had hidden it and connected it to my laptop. As Lauren's voice filled the room, I began to understand what Felicia had spotted. At 43 minutes into the recording, when Lauren was showing me the offshore account transfers, she'd said, "These transfers accelerated significantly after your father passed away, and you deposited that inheritance." Sonia, I said, my voice tight with realization, Lauren knew exactly when my father died, and when I deposited the inheritance. That's not information Dean would have casually shared with someone he'd just started dating. My God, Sonia breathed. She's been involved from the very beginning. Emily, that means she was probably there when they planned my father's accident too. I finished, the horrible truth crystallizing. My father had died in what the police ruled a single-car accident on an icy road, but now I remembered details that hadn't seemed significant at the time. Dean had been unusually insistent that my father visit that particular weekend, despite the bad weather forecast. He'd even offered to drive my father to the airport, though my father had refused, preferring to drive himself. Emily, you need to get that recording to the FBI immediately. But first, get somewhere safe. My phone buzzed with a text from Lauren. Thank you for trusting me today. I'm meeting with my lawyer friend tonight. Don't worry, we're going to protect you from Dean's schemes. Another text followed immediately after, this one from Dean. Hey Em, heard Aunt Felicia had some medical issues. I'm at the hospital with Mom. She's asking for you. The timing was too perfect. Felicia collapses just hours after I meet with Lauren. Dean and his mother just happen to be at the hospital, and Lauren is meeting with her lawyer friend tonight. They're moving faster than we expected. I told Sonia. Something about today's meeting spooked them, or they realized Felicia was more dangerous than they thought. Emily, I'm driving up from Chicago now, but it'll take me 3 hours. Can you get to the bank and retrieve whatever Felicia left there? I looked at the key in my hand, then at the recording device that held evidence of Lauren's involvement in multiple murders. Sonia, what if Felicia didn't have a heart attack? What if they tried to kill her and failed? Then you're probably next on their list. Emily, please get somewhere public and stay there until I arrive. But as I disconnected the call, I realized something that changed everything. If Felicia was still alive, she was lying in a hospital bed, vulnerable and alone. While Dean and his mother had convenient access to her room, I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. Felicia had spent 3 years planning this revenge, had risked everything to help me find justice. I wasn't going to let them finish what they'd started while she was helpless to defend herself. The final phase of our war was beginning, and this time, I was going into it alone. The hospital parking garage felt like a trap as I pulled into a space 3 floors up, trying to steady my nerves. Every shadow could hide a threat, every footstep could belong to someone sent to silence me permanently. But Felicia was somewhere in this building, possibly fighting for her life while Dean and his mother played the role of concerned family. I called Sonia from the car. I'm at the hospital. I need to see Felicia, but I'm scared this is exactly what they want. Emily, this is too dangerous. Wait for me to get there. What if they're trying to finish what they started while she's sedated and vulnerable? I can't leave her alone with them. Then call hospital security. Tell them you're concerned about patient safety. I considered this, but realized the flaw immediately. And say what? That I think my husband's family might try to murder his aunt? They'll think I'm having a breakdown. Emily, I'm going in, but I'm taking precautions. I pulled out my phone and started a video recording. I'm documenting everything from this moment forward. If something happens to me, at least there will be a record. I walked through the hospital corridors with forced confidence, following signs to the cardiac unit. At the nurse's station, I asked about Felicia Olivier. Are you family? The nurse asked. She's my husband's aunt. His mother called and said she was asking for me. Room 447. But visiting hours end in 30 minutes, and she needs rest. Of course, I just want to make sure she's comfortable. Room 447 was in a quiet corridor, and I could hear voices as I approached. Through the partially open door, I saw Dean's mother Elaine sitting beside Felicia's bed, while Dean stood by the window. Felicia appeared to be sleeping, connected to various monitors that beeped softly. Just needs to be adjusted slightly, Elaine was saying in a low voice. The dosage the doctor prescribed isn't quite right for someone her age. Dean glanced toward the door and saw me. Emily, thank God you're here. Aunt Felicia's been asking for you. I entered the room, keeping my phone recording discreetly at my side. How is she? Stable but weak, Elaine said, not moving from her position beside the IV line. Poor thing. At her age, these cardiac events can be so unpredictable. Something in her tone made my skin crawl. I moved closer to Felicia's bedside, noting her unusually pale complexion and the way her breathing seemed labored. Has the doctor said anything about what caused the attack? I asked. Stress, most likely, Dean replied smoothly. She's been worried about family matters lately. Aging can be so difficult. Felicia's eyes fluttered open, focusing on me with obvious effort. Emily, she whispered, so quietly I had to lean close to hear her. I'm here, I said, taking her hand. It felt cold and weak. The key, she breathed. Did you? I found your letter, I assured her quietly. Everything's going to be okay. Dean stepped closer. What's she saying? The medication makes her confused sometimes, but Felicia's eyes were sharp, not confused. She was trying to tell me something. With tremendous effort, she squeezed my hand 3 times, then pointed almost imperceptibly toward the IV line where Elaine sat. I should let her rest, Elaine said, standing up and smoothing her skirt. Dean, we should go get some coffee, and let Emily have some time with her. Actually, I said quickly, I'd like to speak with her doctor first, just to understand her condition better. Dean's jaw tightened slightly. Emily, the doctors are very busy. Maybe we should just, I insist, I said firmly. She's been helping me through the divorce. I feel responsible. Fine, Dean said after a pause. We'll be in the family waiting room. After they left, I immediately went to the nurse's station. Excuse me, I'm concerned about Mrs. Olivier in room 447. Her family was discussing adjusting her medication dosage, but I thought only doctors could do that. The nurse frowned. What do you mean? Her daughter-in-law was saying the dosage wasn't right for someone her age, and she seemed to be near the IV line when I arrived. Mrs. Watson, family members cannot and should not touch any medical equipment. Are you saying you saw someone tampering with the IV? I'm not sure, but Mrs. Olivier seemed to be trying to tell me something about it. The nurse immediately called for the charge nurse, and within minutes, Felicia's room was bustling with medical staff, checking her IV, her medications, and her vital signs. Mrs. Watson, the doctor said after examining Felicia, we're going to run some additional blood tests. If someone has been interfering with the patient's medication, we need to know immediately. I showed them the video recording from my phone. I recorded this when I arrived. I'm not sure if it shows anything, but, as they reviewed the footage, I saw the medical staff exchange concerned looks. On the recording you could clearly see Elaine's hand near the IV line, and a small object being concealed in her purse just before I entered the room. We're calling security, the charge nurse said grimly. And the police, Mrs. Watson, we need you to give a statement about what you observed. Within an hour, police had arrived and Elaine had been detained for questioning. They found a syringe in her purse containing what appeared to be a potassium solution, a substance that could cause cardiac arrest if injected into an IV line. Dean was nowhere to be found. Emily, Sonia's voice came through my phone as I sat in the hospital security office. I just heard from the police. They've issued a warrant for Dean's arrest, but he's disappeared. What about Lauren? Also gone. Her office says she called in sick today and hasn't been responding to calls. Sonia paused. Emily, I think they've run. If Elaine was caught trying to kill Felicia, Dean knows we're onto them. What about the property deal, the $12 million? That's exactly what I'm worried about. If they close that deal tomorrow and disappear with the money, we may never find them. I looked through the security office window at Felicia's room, where she was now under police protection, and slowly recovering as the drugs cleared from her system. Sonia, I said, a plan forming in my mind. What if we don't try to stop them from running? What if we let them think they've won, and then trap them when they try to collect their money? Emily, that's incredibly dangerous. But it's also our only chance. They think Felicia's dead or dying, they think I'm just a confused victim, and they think they've eliminated the only threats to their plan. What are you proposing? I looked at Felicia, who was awake now, and listening intently despite her weakness. I'm proposing we give them exactly what they want, I said. Tomorrow, I'm going to sign those divorce papers, and then I'm going to walk straight into their trap. Absolutely not. Sonia's voice was sharp through the phone. Emily, you're talking about using yourself as bait. If something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong, I interrupted, looking at Felicia, who was nodding approvingly from her hospital bed. Because we're going to control every aspect of the situation. Felicia's voice was still weak but determined. Tell her the plan, Emily. I pulled out the bank key. First, I retrieve whatever evidence Felicia left in the safety deposit box. Then I call Dean and tell him I'm ready to sign the divorce papers. I'll seem broken, defeated, grateful that Lauren helped me understand the truth about the property investments. And when Dean realizes you're not actually signing over the assets he thinks exist, Sonia asked. That's where it gets interesting, Felicia interjected. Emily, show her the real property documents I left in box 247. 2 hours later, I stood in the vault at First National Bank, staring at documents that changed everything I thought I knew about Felicia Olivier. The safety deposit box contained not just our collected evidence, but property deeds, stock certificates, and bank statements showing that Felicia was worth over $30 million. More importantly, she owned the building where Dean's accounting firm operated, the warehouse where he stored stolen goods, and had liens on every property he and Lauren had fraudulently purchased. My dear, Felicia explained when I returned to the hospital, Henry wasn't just an accountant, he was an investment genius who taught me everything about hiding assets. I've been playing poor and helpless for 3 years while secretly acquiring control of everything Dean thought he owned. You've been bankrolling our investigation with your own fortune, I realized. And tomorrow, when Dean tries to close that $12 million deal, he's going to discover that Lauren never actually had the authority to sell that property. I've owned it through a shell company for 6 months. My phone buzzed. Dean, perfect timing, I said, showing them the screen. Emily, I heard about Aunt Felicia. I'm so sorry, I know you two had gotten close. His voice carried just the right amount of grief and concern. If I didn't know better, I might have believed he actually cared. Dean, I said, letting my voice crack. I can't handle this anymore. First the divorce, now Felicia, I just want this to be over. I know, sweetheart, this has been hard on everyone. Can we meet tomorrow? I'm ready to sign the papers. Lauren helped me understand about the property investments, and I just want to walk away clean. Of course, where would you like to meet? The house, our house. It seems appropriate. After I hung up, Felicia smiled with satisfaction. Phase 1 complete, now for the real trap. She pulled out her tablet and showed me a floor plan of our house, marked with positions for FBI agents, recording equipment, and escape routes. Tomorrow at noon, Dean Watson walks into a house surrounded by federal agents, wired for sound and video, to commit multiple felonies while on recording. And Lauren will be there too, I guarantee it. She won't trust Dean to handle the final cleanup alone, especially not when $30 million is at stake. I stared at the plan, at the culmination of 3 years of patient preparation. Felicia, why did you really help me? It wasn't just about Henry's business, was it? Her expression softened. Dean Watson represents everything I've fought against my entire life. Men who see women as disposable, who take what doesn't belong to them, who destroy lives for profit. You deserve justice, Emily. And sometimes justice requires a patient hand. Tomorrow would determine whether 3 years of planning would finally deliver that justice. I arrived at my own house at 11:30 the next morning, knowing that FBI agents were already positioned in unmarked vehicles throughout the neighborhood. The recording equipment Felicia had provided was more sophisticated than anything I'd imagined. Cameras hidden in smoke detectors, microphones built into picture frames, even a panic button disguised as a pen in my pocket. Dean arrived precisely at noon, his BMW pulling into the driveway with its usual quiet confidence. He looked immaculate as always. Designer suit, perfect hair, the warm smile that had once made me feel so loved and now made my skin crawl. Emily, he said, pulling me into an embrace that felt like being hugged by a snake. You look tired, sweetheart. This has been so hard on you. I just want it to be over, I said, the exhaustion in my voice entirely genuine. The lawyers, the property issues Lauren showed me, Felicia's death, I can't take any more. His eyes sharpened slightly at the mention of Felicia. I'm so sorry about Aunt Felicia. The funeral arrangements, I don't want to talk about it, I interrupted. Let's just sign the papers and move on with our lives. Dean spread the divorce documents on the kitchen table where I'd found them just days ago. As he explained each section with practiced concern, I watched his performance with new eyes, seeing the calculation behind every sympathetic expression. The property investments Lauren showed you, he said carefully, those will be resolved separately from the divorce. You won't be liable for any of that. How generous of you to protect me from investments I never made, I replied. Something flickered across his face. Emily, I know you're upset, but the front door opened and Lauren walked in without knocking, carrying a briefcase and wearing the confident smile of someone who believed she'd won. Sorry I'm late, she said, kissing Dean's cheek casually. Traffic was murder getting across town. Lauren, I said evenly, I wasn't expecting you. I wanted to be here for moral support, and to make sure all the property issues are handled correctly. She opened her briefcase and pulled out additional documents. Emily, these papers will transfer your liability for the investment properties to Dean, protecting you from any future legal issues. I examined the documents, noting how they appeared to protect me while actually signing away rights to assets I didn't know I had. This seems very comprehensive. We want to make sure you're protected, Dean said, his hand resting possessively on Lauren's shoulder. After everything you've been through, everything I've been through, I repeated slowly, like having my business sabotaged, like having my husband's family try to murder his aunt in the hospital. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Emily, Dean said carefully, I think grief is making you say things. Grief isn't making me say anything, I interrupted, standing up from the table. Felicia isn't dead, Dean. Your mother failed. They caught her trying to inject potassium into Felicia's IV line. Lauren's confident mask slipped completely. That's impossible. The hospital said, what you wanted to hear. I continued, pulling out my phone. But Felicia is very much alive, and talking. Dean lunged for my phone, but I stepped back quickly. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Not with federal agents watching the house. Federal agents, Lauren whispered. Oh yes. They've been building cases against both of you for months. Wire fraud, money laundering, attempted murder, conspiracy. I smiled at their stricken faces. Should I continue? Dean's charm disappeared entirely, replaced by cold calculation. Emily, you have no idea what you're dealing with. If you think, I think you're both going to prison for the rest of your lives, I said calmly. Unless you'd like to confess right here, right now, and maybe negotiate some kind of deal. Lauren grabbed Dean's arm. We need to leave, now. Nobody's leaving, I said, pressing the panic button in my pocket. In fact, I think some people want to meet you. The front door burst open as FBI agents flooded into the room, weapons drawn, voices commanding Dean and Lauren to get on the ground. As they were handcuffed, Dean looked at me with pure hatred. You stupid bitch. Do you have any idea what you've done? Yes, I said, watching the agents lead him away. I've done exactly what I should have done 5 years ago. I've stopped believing your lies. The FBI agents had barely finished reading Dean and Lauren their rights when Agent Patricia Collins, the lead investigator Sonia had connected us with, approached me with a satisfied expression. Mrs. Watson, that was textbook perfect, she said, removing her earpiece. We got everything we needed on recording. Their admissions, their reactions to your accusations, even Lauren's slip about knowing what the hospital said. Through the window, I watched Dean being placed in the back of a federal vehicle, his face a mask of rage and disbelief. Lauren was in a separate car, crying hysterically as the reality of her situation finally hit her. What happens now? I asked. Now the real work begins, Agent Collins replied, settling into the chair Dean had occupied just minutes before. Based on what we recorded today, combined with the evidence Mrs. Olivier provided, we're looking at federal charges across multiple jurisdictions. She opened a thick folder, and spread documents across the kitchen table where Dean had tried to manipulate me one final time. Wire fraud, mail fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, identity theft, tax evasion, the list goes on. How long will they go to prison? Dean Watson is looking at life without parole, if we can prove his connection to the suspicious deaths of his previous wives. Even without that, he's facing 40 to 50 years minimum. I thought about the woman Dean had married before Sonia, the one who died in that convenient car accident. Will you be investigating those deaths? Already started. Lauren's been cooperating since we arrested her, trying to save herself. She's provided details about Dean's methods going back 6 years. Agent Collins showed me a timeline that made my blood run cold. Dean Watson has been perfecting this pattern since he was in his 20s. Marry vulnerable women, gain control of their finances, eliminate them when they're no longer useful. You would have been victim number 4, Mrs. Watson. What about the money, the properties, the offshore accounts? All frozen as of this morning. The property deal they were counting on to fund their escape. That was the final piece of our trap. Lauren tried to close on $12 million worth of real estate that Mrs. Olivier has owned for months. Agent Collins smiled grimly. Dean and Lauren thought they were playing chess, while Mrs. Olivier was playing four-dimensional chess. Every move they made for the past year, she anticipated and countered. My phone rang. The hospital, Mrs. Watson. Mrs. Olivier is asking for you. She says she has something important to show you. 30 minutes later, I stood in Felicia's hospital room as she used her tablet to show me news articles that were already appearing online. Real estate fraud ring exposed, read the headline from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. FBI arrests couple in multi-million-dollar scam. It's over, Felicia said simply. Dean Watson will never hurt another woman. What about Elaine? Dean's mother, charged with attempted murder. She's looking at 15 to 20 years. Felicia's expression was satisfied. The entire family enterprise has been dismantled. Agent Collins appeared in the doorway. Ladies, I have news about the asset recovery. She handed me a financial document that made my eyes widen. Mrs. Watson, after removing the fraudulent debts and recovering the stolen assets, your net worth is approximately $2.3 million. That's impossible. Dean was stealing from you, yes, but he was also using your identity to make profitable investments he planned to claim later. Now those profits legally belong to you. Felicia squeezed my hand. Justice isn't just about punishment, dear. It's about restoration. You've lost 5 years of your life to that man, but now you have the resources to build whatever future you want. I stared at the documents, thinking about the woman who'd walked into this house just days ago, broken and believing she had nothing left. There's one more thing, Agent Collins said. We found evidence that Dean was planning to fake his own death after your murder, collect on insurance policies, and disappear with Lauren to South America. Instead, he's going to disappear into federal prison. As I left the hospital that evening, I realized that Felicia had given me something more valuable than money or justice. She'd given me back my strength, my intelligence, and my belief that I deserved better than the lies I'd been living. 3 days after the arrests, I stood in the empty house that Dean and I had once called home, methodically packing the belongings that were actually mine. The FBI had released the property after documenting it as evidence, and I'd discovered that thanks to Felicia's foresight, the mortgage was already paid in full through one of her shell companies. I always knew you'd be here when I came back for my things. Dean's voice from the doorway made me freeze. I turned slowly to find him standing in the entryway. No longer the polished professional I'd married, but a broken man in an orange jumpsuit, flanked by 2 federal marshals. Mr. Watson has 20 minutes to collect personal items, one of the marshals explained. Court-approved supervised visit. Dean looked around the living room where our final confrontation had taken place, his eyes lingering on the spots where FBI agents had tackled him to the ground. You destroyed everything, Emily. Everything we built together. We never built anything together, I replied calmly, continuing to pack my grandmother's china. You built lies on top of theft, on top of more lies. I just stopped believing them. He moved closer, the marshals watching his every step. Do you have any idea what prison is like for people like me, what they do to men who hurt women? I imagine it's exactly what you deserve. Emily, please. His voice cracked, and for a moment I almost glimpsed the man I'd thought I'd married. I know I made mistakes, but I never stopped loving you. The thing with Lauren, the properties, it all got out of hand, but my feelings for you were real. I set down the dish I was wrapping, and looked at him directly. Dean, you planned to murder me. You increased my life insurance, and planned my death like a business transaction. That's not love. That's not even human. I was in too deep. Lauren, the debts, the pressure, I didn't know how to get out without losing everything. So your solution was to kill your wife? He had no answer for that. We stood in silence for a moment, the weight of 5 wasted years between us. The FBI told me about the others, I continued quietly. Damon, the widow with 2 children, Sonia, how many women did you practice on before you got to me? Dean's shoulders sagged. It wasn't supposed to be like this with you. When we first met, I thought maybe I could be different. But you couldn't, because this is who you are, Dean. This has always been who you are. One of the marshals stepped forward. Time's up, Watson. As they prepared to lead him away, Dean turned back one last time. What about forgiveness, Emily? What about second chances? I thought about Felicia, lying in a hospital bed, because this man's mother had tried to murder her. I thought about the other women whose lives he'd destroyed, whose deaths he'd caused, whose trust he'd betrayed. Some people deserve second chances, Dean. You've proven over and over that you're not one of them. You'll regret this, he said, his mask finally slipping completely. You'll regret destroying me. No, I said with absolute certainty. The only thing I regret is not seeing who you really were 5 years ago. As the marshals led him away, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, complete peace with a decision I'd made. For the first time since I'd discovered those divorce papers, I wasn't looking backward at what I'd lost, I was looking forward to what I'd gained. The house felt different after Dean left. Not empty, but clean, free of the toxic energy that had been poisoning it for years. I finished packing my things, leaving behind everything that reminded me of our life together. Tomorrow I would start over, and this time, I would do it with my eyes wide open. 6 months later, I stood in the sunlit lobby of the Olivier Foundation for Victims of Financial Abuse, watching Felicia cut the ribbon on our new headquarters in downtown Milwaukee. The building, purchased with funds recovered from Dean's criminal enterprise, would serve as a resource center for people who'd experienced what I had. Ladies and gentlemen, Felicia announced to the gathered crowd of reporters and supporters, this foundation exists because one woman refused to sign papers that would have made her disappear. Emily Watson chose to fight back, and in doing so, she saved not just her own life, but the lives of future victims. I stepped forward to the microphone, looking out at faces that included Sonia, now our chief legal counsel, Agent Collins, who'd become a close friend, and even Mrs. Peterson, my former neighbor who'd testified at Dean's trial. The Olivier Foundation will provide free legal services, financial counseling, and safe housing for anyone trapped in situations like mine, I said. But more than that, we'll help people recognize the warning signs before they lose everything they've worked for. Dean and Lauren were both serving life sentences without parole. Dean's mother had died in prison 3 months after her conviction. The investigation into Dean's previous marriages had resulted in murder charges that ensured he would never see freedom again. We've also established a scholarship fund, Felicia added, for women returning to school or starting businesses after escaping financial abuse, because sometimes the best revenge is living well. After the ceremony, Felicia and I walked to her car together. At 84, she moved more slowly now, but her mind remained razor sharp. Any regrets? She asked, as we drove through the city where our adventure had begun. I thought about the question seriously, only that I didn't meet you sooner. Nonsense. You met me exactly when you were ready to fight. As we pulled into the parking garage of my new apartment, a beautiful space I'd chosen and furnished entirely according to my own taste, I reflected on how completely my life had changed. I had my strength back, my financial independence, my sense of self-worth. Most importantly, I had learned to trust my instincts again. Thank you, I told Felicia as she prepared to leave. For everything. Thank you, my dear, for proving that sometimes the best plans are the ones that bring out the hero in someone else. That evening, I sat on my balcony overlooking Lake Michigan, raising a glass of wine to toast the sunset. Tomorrow, I would review applications for foundation grants. Next week, I would speak at a conference about financial abuse prevention. But tonight, I was simply Emily Watson, not a victim, not a survivor, but a woman who had learned that the most powerful thing you can do when someone tries to destroy you is refuse to let them succeed. The best revenge, as Felicia had said, was indeed living well.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.